and K alongside Ernesto. You're probably wondering why we are doing this kind of St. Patrick's Day special. And, that being said, happy St. Patrick's to you. How are you doing?
Happy St. Patty's, man.
I know. I figured for this occasion I'd pop out the Larry Bird Celtics jersey
Classic, man. That's a
on
beauty right
occasion.
there.
Yeah, hell yeah. I got to roll with that. Keep it thematic here. So normally we are doing an NBA game here Thursday nights, but this is kind of one of these rare days during the regular season that's not in the All Star break, where they have either one or two games or no games at all. But this night, St. Patrick's Day, which usually it's been kind of a big deal for them. They've had like St. Patrick's Day games before between I know remember like the Knicks and the Bulls, they would have the green jerseys.
I
and
remember
and it,
that.
u- yeah, and it used to be a little bit of a big deal, but today on St. Patrick's Day we get the world-beating Pistons and the Magic. So
Man,
really,
something
this late in the
I never.
season, yeah, two teams that are playing for nothing. I don't even want to say like draft position just because of the lottery and how that works out.
Mhm.
But it's just they're tanking. They don't seem to have any type of direction. So we're not even going to cover their kind of crappy game that will probably be played tonight, especially because we have March Madness starting. Just there's more important things in the overall basketball world going on. That being said, we have March Madness starting today with the round of 64, which is really the most. They split up into 2 days. The first first set of the rounds on Thursday, and the next games we'll have tomorrow. And it could be overwhelming because they start at like noon, and then they have games running through midnight. So it's literally 12. I mean, if you want to combine tomorrow, it's almost 24 straight hours of college basketball, of meaningful college basketball, and it's one of the most exciting 2 days of especially the whole March Madness.
For real, man. They take over all of TV, man. I feel like they're on every channel. Every channel I switch to, there's a college game going on.
Yeah, and especially they're covered on like CBS, True TV, TNT, and I think TBS. I think those are the four
Hmm.
stations that cover them. So if you're watching shows that are in season during this time of the year, you're on break for a month because those
Yeah.
channels mostly every night are playing all of these games. And a lot of the times, especially after these first two rounds, we're now down to 16 all the way through the champion. It's prime time games. You're getting the best teams. So these first two games, we just have New Mexico State and UConn kick off now.
Okay.
But I don't know. Did you fill out a bracket? I know you're not too much of a college basketball guy.
I didn't fill out a bracket only because of what you just said. I'm not a college basketball guy. I don't really follow the season like that. Um, sometimes I will bet on a couple games if I am feeling like, I want to add something to the parlay. But usually don't fill out a bracket though. But I know you're big on college basketball. You must have filled out a couple of them, right?
I did. I filled them both the same way just because I don't like changing it up. Like I think maybe it's my OCD, but I have my one bracket that I take very seriously, and that's it. It's integrity, and that's how I do it every year. So far we have 8 completed games, and obviously the biggest story so far is Iowa, the 5th seed, losing to Richmond, the 12 seed, which just played recently for their ticket to even get into the tournament. So they were kind of on a bit of a momentum tear for the Spiders, Richmond Spiders. So they knock off Iowa. I personally had Iowa going all the way to the championship game and losing to Gonzaga. So
Wow.
that part of so that streamline to the championship bracket is busted. But other than that, I gotta say I love to say I've gotten the rest of them right so far. Michigan State, Providence, Baylor, Memphis, North Carolina, which was huge over Marquette for an 8-9 seed. You don't usually get a 30-point blowout. But you do there. Gonzaga, and then you had Tennessee over what are they? Longview State,
Long,
Longwood State.
long.
And there's actually Tennessee is actually very funny to me because I'm going to tell you this story, and I wanted to know if you find it as funny as I do. So a while ago, I was at work and there was nothing to do and I was bored. So I texted my girlfriend this story about Tennessee. It was kind of like, oh, did you know this kind of thing? So I pretended that the story was the Tennessee, their football program. They've been around since the 1800s, the school. So for the longest time, yeah. So for the longest time, in their football stadium, their concessions people, they had concession stand workers and stuff like that. Then during the Great Depression, this is all in a text. I'm coming up with this on my mind. Then during the Great Depression, the school was hit by the Depression, so they weren't able to pay their concession stand workers and their stadium workers anymore. So from that point forward, they had volunteer workers, volunteers come to the stadium and man all the concession stands like that, hence being called the Tennessee Volunteers. So at that point, I made the whole thing how they used to be called the employees.
Oh, wow.
So now every time with Tennessee, anytime it brings it up, Peyton Manning, anytime Tennessee comes up, I'm like, go employees. So it's just become this inside joke between us. And so now that they're doing well, it's just fantastic because I say it every day now.
Yeah, man.
And I'm like, babe, you see what the employees are doing? You see what the employees did last night?
And it's cool, though. It has a ring to it. It rhymes with
right?
Tennessee.
Right? So yeah. So that was it. That the volunteers used to be called the employees. But
Man.
It's not true,
But you know what's funny, though? I remember, like, back in the day when I used to sort of follow the college basketball stuff, I remember the big teams were like Duke. I know Duke isn't really that good anymore. The North Carolinas, the UConns, and stuff like that. Like, how are they doing right now? Like, I know North Carolina's in the tournament, right?
Yeah, so North Carolina is an 8 seed, so they had their legendary coach Roy Williams retire a couple of years ago. So they are still historically and brand wise one of the 5-10 most iconic schools for college basketball. But the actual quality and of the program, now I don't want to say the quality because that's not fair to say. I don't want to say the quality of the program is bad. It is just like, it's gone through ups and downs, and so they're in a little bit of a dip. An 8 seed, they just beat the crap out of Marquette. So they're going to move on to the second round as a pretty solid 8 seed. And North Carolina beat Duke in their final home game, and like, I don't want to say convincingly, but it was like kind of a big deal. So North Carolina, one of these schools that are iconic, and they're always going to be able to be scout and have kids come, recruit kids well. So they're always going to be at least an average to good team, to good school. And, like Duke, Kentucky, they're still top seeds like that. UCLA is a top seed. So for the most part, college basketball powers are still the college basketball powers. They're like you have like Michigan State. They're kind of lower. But then there were like newer, overall in the grand scheme of college basketball, newer schools like a Villanova or Gonzaga that are really, at the top. Gonzaga's been in the tournament 25 straight years.
Been pretty good. Yeah, Gonzaga's been pretty good as long as I've been like knowing anything about college basketball.
Yeah, and then every year you get schools that are kind of up and down, like Texas Tech, who was in the finals the final game a couple years ago. They've been a good team over the last couple of years. So there are schools that are your absolute, Kansas also is up there, your absolute dominant college basketball programs. And then, it's the same thing with football. You have your top 10 and then the rest kind of is a little bit up for grabs.
Okay.
And in a situation with March Madness where every game is a do or die survival of the fittest, you can have some of these outlier schools with like a Baylor, who's not necessarily known as a college basketball powerhouse, win last year and have a pretty good chance to defend their title this year too. So for the most part, the big-time college basketball schools throughout time are still the programs that they are today. But, basketball is different because it's not like football or even baseball where it's weather dependent and there's a lot of, like football practices a lot. There's pads and it is a bit of an investment, not just financially, but overall with what you're doing. Basketball, look, if you got a ball and a basket, you can find some way to hoop.
Yeah.
So the basketball talent pool is spread so far through the country that a lot of these kind of mid-tier level schools can still have solid programs based on solid talent pools.
So you'd say there's a lot more parity within college basketball than there is college football.
Yes, a
Okay.
hundred percent, a hundred
Yeah, because
percent.
college football, it's always the same teams in the championship games and competing for the national title as well.
Yeah, I mean, and the same, and we get to we had the
It,
college.
it doesn't seem as intriguing to me.
Yeah, and that's why, we had, especially with COVID, year March Madness was taken away from us 2 years ago. Last year's was kind of a little bit of a science experiment, I'll say. But this year round, this go round, we're getting March Madness back.
Yeah,
We're
which is really
getting these
exciting.
arenas filled. Even maybe if they're not 100%, mandates are lifted, mandates are relaxed, overall capacities are at pretty high percentages. So we are the closest we've gotten in 3 years to a real March Madness, and so I'm over the moon about it.
Nah, yeah, it's back, man, and it's really cool to see because not only in the sporting aspect of it, but also like during March season, everybody knowing about March Madness, you see different things being played, within media, at jobs about creating little brackets and just
Yeah,
it creates for an opportunity to kind of have fun with the whole bracket tournament style type of things with different type of medias. A lot of people like to rank different type of music, different type of shows, what are their favorite movies, and the whole bracket thing is just cool to me during March season.
yeah. I this the whole there is like this addiction aspect to it because you there's some, especially some of these matchups where you feel like you can't stop overthinking it, where
Yep.
you can't just make a pick and you're like, all right, there is that urge to overthink it, think about the upset, think of a blowout. So there is that unpredictability where I just saw the percentage after Iowa lost in ESPN, all of their submitted brackets, including mine. There is only 1.76 brackets that are perfect left. So through these 8 games, we're
Man,
already knocking out over 98%.
bro, do you know how often it happens where somebody like actually nails a perfect bracket? How often does that happen?
I'm sure I'm sure between, especially now with all of these media outlets having their brackets and people just sitting at home, you can I mean, you there could be these older guys that print out a bracket, they have their grandson send them they print it out and they just write it
Hmm.
down and then that's that. We don't know. Maybe this old guy in Montana has a perfect bracket, but the world doesn't know about it because he's not on the computer or whatever. So I think there probably is on a year to year basis, maybe one every year that's 100% right, but it's very very rare. Where I
Yeah,
especially
man.
now that with the Iowa out, now that we're already at just over just under 2% left, or 100% left, or 100% correct. We're only 8 games in. I mean, we still got
Mm,
like another 4 or 5 games tonight, all of tomorrow, and that's just the first round.
yeah, man.
So I can really see this year not being perfect. But I know I had just when I was doing my bracket and Sweet 16 on my personal show, Home Court Press, which is Spanglish Sports Network. Check that out, Mondays 6:30. Plug for myself. When I was going over my Sweet 16, I wasn't even really putting the upset factor into the equation because I can't predict that.
Yeah.
Other than maybe
I mean,
like, I have a gut feeling that this, 13 seed will win or
it's
this
tough to
12 seed
predict
will win.
even like first round matchups, because you get that every year where you get one or two upsets that like completely bust the brackets, and It
Right.
just sounds like one of the toughest things to predict. Like I feel like, winning the lottery, you got more chances of that than ever getting a perfect bracket.
Honestly, I mean, it's really and at the end of the day, there are only so many options. Like in
Hmm.
each game, there's only either one of those two teams can win. So the chances are low, but man, just the whole science of picking a bracket is really it drives people to insanity. I gotta say, it really does. But yeah, with my Iowa being busted, good thing I was honestly I was really considering, especially with tonight only being the Pistons and Magic, I really was
Hmm.
considering just betting the string of 12 games today,
Really?
and I didn't, and I didn't. But especially throughout that Iowa game when I was 7 for 7, I was like, damn man, I should have bet. I was all for it, but no,
It
with
was a
this,
perfect night.
yeah, it's gonna. I
But
probably will when you get
your
down.
thing, your parlay would have probably got busted, right? Because I'm
I
guessing that you
did.
would have picked
Yeah,
Iowa
I did.
game.
Yes, I did.
Mm,
Yeah, I would have picked my bets the same way I picked the bracket.
the bracket. That's right.
I mean, I don't. Why wouldn't I change it if I'm trying to if I'm trying to be accurate in the bracket? Why wouldn't I try and be this have the same accuracy in making money or the attempt to make money?
Yeah. True. True.
But yeah, so the rest or the first day of round one will continue through tonight with what I said before, UConn and New Mexico State underway. But we're gonna
You
up
also got
the
some games tomorrow.
yes, we do have the whole second half of round one tomorrow. So they have the 12s. I can't even count anymore. But however, the first half, the 64, they have the first half of games Thursday, second half on Friday, and then
Hmm.
then there'll be like a day break. Or no, actually there won't be. It'll
Yeah,
go
they're going
round one.
straight
It'll
into
go
the
round
second
one.
round. Yeah.
Right. So it'll go round one is the 17th, 18th. Round two is 19th and 20th. And then we'll have a 4 day break before the
Hmm.
Sweet 16 starts. But then the Sweet 16 through Elite 8 is 4 straight days. And then the
Which I think works
final,
out.
yeah. And then we get a couple break between the final four, and then a 1 day break between that and the championship game. So there's a couple breaks throughout this whole month of basketball, but a lot of days of consecutive basketball all day or all afternoon once you get down to these higher rounds. So
The betters are going to
that
be
is
going crazy.
yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Especially with the legalized gambling and with baseball too. So there are a lot of these March Madness baseball, hockey playoffs, NBA, where with this legalized gambling now, these sports are going to be benefiting so much for them,
Hmm.
and the money is absolutely insane. But that is going to wrap up our college talk. Let's take it up to your Nets and Ben Simmons. So he hasn't played yet. We were in agreement that he should have been playing in either or both the stretch of the Knicks and Magic game,
Hmm.
and he has yet to see the court. This is your team. I want your thoughts
I
on
mean,
this.
we still have to see if he's even going to see the court at any point in the regular season. I know the other day, Steve Nash during a press conference was asked about Ben Simmons' status, and he was saying that he was hopeful that we'll see him on the court during this regular season. And the Nets have been really vague about what's been going on with Ben Simmons ever since they traded for him. At first, when they first traded for him, he had no injury. You know what I mean? There was no talk about his back being sore, about him being injured in any type of way, and it just made it weird. You know what I mean? And I'm pretty sure that they probably kept that under wraps so that the trade could go through, because obviously you can't pull through with trades if you have an injured player involved.
Right.
And it's just really disheartening. You know what I mean? Because the whole season the Nets have been really inconsistent with their lineups. They've trotted out so many starting lineups, haven't had consistency on the team to build chemistry for a postseason run. And even though we can probably surpass some of the worries about that with how much talent we have, we obviously have KD and Kyrie on the team who have been going through a scoring tear as of late. It's just disheartening to not see Ben Simmons on the court yet. And with how cryptic the Nets have been, who knows if we'll even see him during the playoffs? You know what I mean? This could be something that could be hampering him throughout the rest of the year. And I'm just hopeful that we can see him by the time the playoffs roll around because I'm pretty sure that we'll need him for that run if we want to win a championship.
Now, let me ask you this. I don't know what your thoughts are on this specific part of this problem, but would you rather, as a Nets fan, would you rather him shut it down for the season and just get the headache out of the way and get your closure for what you're going to be for the rest of the season, or would you rather him kind of rehab this rest of the regular season and come back in the playoffs?
I mean, I think it starts with the Nets organization being clear to the media and to the fans about what's actually going on, because like every time they're asked about it, they've been really cagey about everything, and all they listed as is back soreness. At first, it started off as being a conditioning thing, which turned into an injury thing. So who knows? Maybe he's well conditioned enough to play, but the back is keeping him from playing. Like they just have to be clear about us with everything. And from there, I think it'll be easier to kind of make a decision on what to do with him, whether to shut him down or to play him. I think that if it was something as serious as him being injured for the rest of the year, they might have already stated to the media that that was the case. But I think that this is something that they're still trying to rehab him through. I think they still have hope for him being able to return for at least the playoffs, and that's why they haven't been as clear about what's really going on with him. And honestly, if the injury isn't bad enough to where he has to miss extended period of time, I would prefer for him to rehab because he hasn't been on the court all year. And he's been traded to a new team. He has a new look opportunity and a real chance to win a championship with him on the court. So it would be great to see him back.
I looked online now for any latest uh, updates or anything. So on Fox Sports, they had this article that was posted an hour ago or 2 hours ago, 5:03 p.m. today.
Okay.
NBA rumors: Sixers rival won't have Ben Simmons available anytime soon.
Man.
Did you hear me, or I think I just went out for a second?
Yeah. Nah, yeah, I heard you. I heard you.
So the Nets supposedly won't have Ben Simmons around anytime soon, which in my head means throughout this playoffs too.
Man. I mean, that's the thing, You got one source talking about he won't be coming back anytime soon, and then other sources close to the Nets who are saying that the Nets are hopeful that he could return for at least the postseason, And that's what's so frustrating about this. Usually, when you have injuries happen, I mean, last night Steph just got injured, right? And we already have heard that there's a big chance that he can miss the playoffs. You know what I mean? They gave him an
Yes,
MRI
we.
same night that the injury occurred, and like if it's as easy as figuring it out one day after for the 76er, not the 76ers, excuse me, the Warriors, to find out about Steph's injury concerns. I don't understand why it's not, possible for the Nets to be clear with everybody about what's really going on with Ben Simmons. That's the most frustrating part about this. Who knows what could happen, but I feel like until Steve Nash or Sean Marks can tell the world about what's really going on and how much time Ben Simmons is really going to miss, we really need a timetable to determine whether or not he's going to play or not.
I think the Nets are organization at least are kind of in this rogue mentality where they were just fined $50,000 for having Kyrie in the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
If they are going to, if they are okay with spending $50,000 just to let him into the locker room, why wouldn't they be okay with spending that or a fraction of that because the violations, the fines are like like through 2003 4000, they're measly, they're a percentage of
Mm-hmm.
that fine itself. So who says they aren't planning to just go full in for every playoff game? Doesn't all the home games will have Kyrie play and will pay whatever the fine is. So I think
Yeah,
they're
man.
they're they're in this kind of rogue mentality where they're telling us things, but they seem to have an ulterior motive in mind, or they seem to have other plans that they have for Kyrie or Ben Simmons too. I don't know. Maybe they could be all up in the air and lying about Ben Simmons and his situation. I just it's
Yeah,
like I
man.
said,
I
they
mean,
are they are a powder keg. They are a powder keg.
it'd be it'd be awesome if Joe Tsai was, one of those owners who was more vocal to the media about things, but he's not. Sean Marks has been the main mouthpiece for the Nets in terms of front office staff, who really speaks to the media about big things like that. Um, the whole thing with the Nets probably paying fines during the postseason so that Kyrie can play home games, that's been a storyline ever since kind of the middle of the season when we found out that Kyrie was actually going to be back and playing. I wouldn't be surprised if they went through with it because Joe Tsai is on record as saying that he's going to do anything he could to try to win a championship. And the window every year closes for this team. We've already had the core of Kyrie and
At this
KD
point,
for the
every
last
day.
3 years. And yeah, exactly. They've already
Honestly,
been in
every
Brooklyn for
day.
3 years, and the furthest they've reached is the second round. And yeah, you can say that we lost to the champions in the second round last year in the Bucks, but at the end of the day, every single year we've been the favorites to win the championship ever since we got them, and it's almost do or die time for them. And the window's closing ever so slightly every single day, like you said. And I wouldn't be surprised if they went on to pay the fines like that for him to play in the playoffs.
No, and it's slow. And I've mentioned this to you before. Just like this straight up hypocrisy where they have PSA commercials about getting the vaccine.
Mm-hmm. And
Incongruence with Pfizer and any of these other medical companies putting out this PSA commercial saying from the Nets, go get vaccinated.
I've wondered all season if that was kind of the Nets throwing sub shots at Kyrie so he can finally do it. But Kyrie is not going to be swayed on this. If he hasn't done it by now, he's never going to do it. And it's just a shame because honestly, as much as him or KD might want to scapegoat the mayor of New York City or anybody else for how stupid the rule seems to be, because I think it doesn't make any sense. Nobody else can seem to make any sense of it either. The one person who can control what happens going forward is Kyrie if he were to just get vaccinated. But he doesn't seem to want to do that at all. Nobody's been able to persuade him until now, and KD has been pretty loyal to him as far as, not really putting any pressure on him to do anything he doesn't want to do. So it's an unfortunate situation, but we'll have to see how the Nets move forward with that. It's a volatile situation, and if they end up not making the championship again, this will be used as another excuse. But in the long run, all of this isn't really going to be remembered like that. All we're going to be remembered as is the team who had these superstars who couldn't make it to the finals or win one. And that would
I
suck
think
if that's what ended up happening.
I honestly no, I think we're going to kind of look back at this year, especially from Kyrie's perspective, as his COVID year, coming
Yep.
in and or he's gonna have this somewhat of an asterisk on it where we will blatantly and vividly remember you missing half your games, all your home games, and your two Knicks
Hmm.
games because you wouldn't get a vaccine. So there is, while we could sit in one hand and say this mandate is the most hypocritical, idiotic, Swiss cheese whole of a plan that makes absolutely no sense, but you could also say, Kyrie, just go get vaccinated, and that this wouldn't even be an issue. So there is
Exactly.
blame for everybody, and we're March 17th, we're St. Patrick's Day, and we're gonna find out very soon what the answer to this problem that is the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, man. Only 2.5 weeks or so to go in the regular season, and it's going to be interesting going forward.
Yes, so we are going to come from the East Coast, head out west. LeBron James and his Los Angeles Lakers falling from grace where
I
they're
think they've already hit rock bottom, man.
we
I think the
say
fall
that
has been over.
we say that here. I'm gonna pull up their schedule now. I mean, we're saying
Hmm.
now that they're at rock bottom, but every game that they play, something bad happens, a turnover. We're like, well, it's worse. I mean,
I mean,
now
dude,
they go. So they just
I've
lost.
only watched a couple of their games. My bad. I've only watched a couple of their games in the last couple weeks, and dude, the body language of everybody out there just looks like they don't want to be there, man. I think that this
It's
team has
terrible.
given up. They probably know that they'll make the play in by default only because of how bad the bottom of the West is. But it's ridiculous how this Lakers team has gone from favorite to possibly win the championship from the beginning of the year to what they are now, man. It's insane. And
But we were
you know,
supposed
the
to get
only
a
thing that
Nets
I think
Lakers
anybody has to
finals.
look forward to is, yeah, that's what everybody's been hoping for the last 2 years. You know, everybody wants to see the KD LeBron matchup, but I don't see that happening. Who knows what's going to happen with
No,
LeBron going forward if he's going to stay with the Lakers? But this year has been a disaster, man.
I mean they just started a road trip. They lost last night pretty gruesomely to the Timberwolves. This is the
Hmm.
start of a road trip. So at Minnesota, tomorrow at Toronto, Saturday at Washington, and then Monday at Cleveland. Like, I mean, they could lose all three of those games.
Yeah,
And
man.
now
I
and now
mean,
and now
I
what?
probably picked them against the Wizards only because of how bad
Okay,
they
so
are.
even if
But
they go 1-2, but even the one game looks, doesn't look good. It's a really grimy, 80, 88, 87 win, something like that. Terrible shooting percentage. They just look ugly. I mean, it's not gonna, winning the game isn't going to do much for the morale of that team still. I don't think. I mean, and then they have to and
and
they host the
and
76ers after that. I mean,
going to mention that. I was just going to mention that. Even after the road trip, their schedule is still pretty tough because they got the
the
76ers
rest
after
of their
that.
schedule is brutal. We mentioned that.
Hmm.
They have a brutal schedule. One game, if you want to do that Wizards game, have the two. There is one, and then that Oklahoma City game where that team
Hmm.
still gives them trouble, but they would still maybe be favored in two games. I don't even think they'll be
Exactly.
favored in the Wizards game.
It's just ugly, and that's why people are really like me, for example. Just a week or so ago, I thought that there was no way that the Lakers could fall out of play-in contention
I've been
just because of
saying
how
there.
bad
I
the
don't
bottom of the
think.
West is. But it could actually happen, man. If the Trailblazers can manage to win, a major like not even a majority, but even at least half of the rest of their remaining schedule, and the Lakers continue this free fall into the end of the year, we could see the Trailblazers in the play-in amazingly. And I'm
They
pretty sure that
dude,
they wouldn't mind being in that position.
even with the Pelicans, they still play the Pelicans twice. And I think
Hmm.
they've lost both times so far. So they're already 0-2 against them this season. Even if you split, you're still losing the tiebreaker over them, which means you would, at the very, very least, be the 10th seed. Because I still think New Orleans will be able to play better in this second stretch of the this stretch of the season going into the to play in time than the Lakers. The Lakers have a
They're
brutal
definitely
schedule.
and they're playing better than them too. They're more hungry to actually be in this
And I'm
position.
not counting
The
the Spurs
Lakers,
out.
no, you can't count the Spurs
I'm
out. Not
not.
with Popovich there, because Popovich will drive them to want to like if they're close enough to make that playing position, he'll want them to get that experience, to play in big games with high stakes. You want that
Did
for
you see
guys as
how
young as
happy that
Devonte
team
Murray.
was when he finally became the all-time winningest coach?
Yeah, man, it was a sight to see. Like,
I mean,
and nobody deserves it
that
more
wasn't
than
even
Ty.
his guys. That wasn't even Parker, Duncan, Ginobili, Steven Jackson, David Robinson. Those weren't even his guys. Those were these young guys that have only been with him for a few years that surrounded him with such love. I'm not counting them out. Trailblazers, I'm probably that's where I draw the line. But I'm not guaranteeing the Lakers a play-in spot. There's too much basketball to play, too many games still, even against the Pelicans. It's not looking good.
Yeah, man. The only thing that anybody's had to look forward to as a Lakers fan this year is the greatness of LeBron. He surpassed a lot of milestones this year, and he's getting closer and closer to the scoring record. I think he's only a few games away actually from passing Karl Malone's record. Uh, he'll
So
probably look to do that within the next 2 or 3 games.
So this is not basketball related whatsoever, but it's so major that I still have to bring this up. Devonte Adams traded to the Raiders after
Wow.
they just signed Rodgers. They say, "Yeet, get your boy out of here." And they
What
trade
what
Devonte Adams to the Las Vegas Raiders.
what did they get back for him?
Wow. I feel like Adam
That's
Schefter over here, per Adam Schefter, but I feel like Adam Schefter for us over here.
per Brandon
Oh
K.
man. Yeah. I'm sure it'll come up soon, but we'll get back to NBA talk. But that's major. I was not expecting that.
The NFL has been on fire the last few days, man.
Yeah. MLB two, the Freddie Freeman watch is over, heading to Los Angeles, which that lineup is one of the toughest lineups I can remember seeing in a little bit of some time here.
I'm
But back
telling
to
you,
the
man, they get
NBA,
richer.
there's it's really ridiculous. But back to the Lakers, by the thinnest skin of their teeth, hanging on to the 9 seed. New Orleans is a game behind them. San Antonio 2.5. I'm really out on the Lakers. As well as
I
LeBron
mean,
is playing, I'm out.
you've been watching them all year. Like, what are some of the things that you would attribute to how this year has gone?
A lot of it would be forcing square pegs into round holes. And the square peg is Russell Westbrook. And that's not the
Yeah.
only problem. That is not the only problem. There are a lot of other issues. There are just the rest of the roster is too young. The other half of the roster is too old. It's just
Most of it
a
is
lot
too
of it.
old, I think. They gave up a lot of depth in that trade for Westbrook. They gave up Caruso, Kyle Kuzma, and also KCP, who proved to be great role players and were beneficial to that championship that they won just a couple years ago.
I
Another
mean,
thing that's been
they brought Dwight Howard back for his third
yeah,
stint with the Lakers,
you
just
know, but like
because
I believe
you
that
know.
Howard even provides good depth for them at this point. He's not really that useful on the court, just in small spurts of minutes. But he's not a guy that you're going to really trot out there for the playoffs. He's not the type of player who is that good anymore. And another huge thing that's been hampering them this year has been the injuries, I think, too. Like, you had a lot of stretches during the year where you had LeBron out and AD out. Russell Westbrook has been the one who stayed healthy, but he's known as an Iron Man in his career. But when you're depending on Westbrook to lead you to wins at this point in his career, we've seen the downfall really happen this year. It's tough, and you can't really expect too many wins with how that roster is constructed to happen with only Westbrook leading you.
I mean, it's so bad for them. I don't know if you saw this play, but Westbrook he took a shot last night. I think it was a three. It was a corner three, and he airballed it far. Like this sailed over the basket, not even close. And Pat Beverly and Karl Anthony Towns like together get the rebound, but Pat Beverly ends up dribbling it up the court. And Karl Anthony Towns, while the play is still going on, he's standing there at the basket, like looking around, like, where the hell were you shooting that? Like
Yeah, man, he looked like
visibly mocking him
he looked like he
while the
just heard
play is
gunshot.
going on. That's how bad it is for them.
Dude, he's getting it from everywhere. He's getting it from the players on the court. He's getting it from the media. He's getting it from the fans. I just saw a TikTok video where, some fans were at the game in like front row calling him Westbrook right to his face and just trying to get into it with him. It's just crazy, man. The downfall has been televised this year. I don't know if he really necessarily deserves it, but at the same time, it's hard for me to feel bad for him just after all these years. He's been known as kind of like a really confrontational player on the court and to the media and stuff like that. So you do kind of reap what you sow in that context, but at the same time, it's just tough to see a player who was as great as he was at one point fall so far to the bottom. You know what I mean? Like, he's been one of the biggest reasons why this Lakers team isn't in the position where they thought they would be. And it's just a shame to see, you know what I mean? And he still has another year left with them. He's going to take that option. He'd be an idiot if he didn't. It's up for $47 million. And the Lakers just have to eat crow on this one. I don't think his trade value is anywhere near what it has been in the past few years. He's jumped around on different teams in the last 3 years, but his trade value has plummeted to a point where I don't think any team is going to want to trade for him just because of how his skills have eroded and how big of a contract he's demanding as well.
And someone we haven't even mentioned yet, Anthony Davis, who can't
Mm-hmm.
stay on the court if you put a gun to his head. I mean, and
I'm
it
telling.
sucks, and it sucks because every play that he's on the court and he is healthy at the moment, there's always that even subconscious thing where it's, is he going to get hurt on this play? Is he going to twist his
Mm-hmm.
ankle on this? Is he going to tear an ACL on that, coming down from that rebound? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and and looking at him, he's a big guy, but he's not the most muscular. He is slightly on the frailer side, not like a Kevin Durant, but he is on the so there is kind of that thing where maybe it's just he's putting too much overall pressure and torque and tension on the body, where especially now this late in his career, it's, that the house is crumbling, and
Yeah, man, it's
his
crazy.
foundation has been permanently, damaged. So I think Anthony Davis in and out of the lineup is an issue. In retrospect, you probably should have gotten rid of him before,
Mm,
because
I don't know.
I don't
I
know.
don't know about
No,
because at
that's
the
what I'm
time
saying.
they
In
got him.
retrospect, I'm, you're not saying that in the moment, but in retrospect now,
No, but
it's
even in retrospect, though, they at least they got a championship out of it, which is why I don't
after
think that
that.
that
I'm
was the
saying
worst
after
move in
that.
the world.
So
Yeah,
with overall the
but I
last
mean,
2 years,
he was up for a contract right after the championship, and coming off of that, you have to know that the Lakers were gonna offer him that max. You know what I mean? And it was kind of a position they had to be in because they still had to keep LeBron. They still had him under contract. LeBron was the guy who advocated for him to go to LA, and everybody knew what the deal was when he got there. They knew that the Lakers were going to offer him that max and that he was going to sign on the dotted line. Now, you always had to think about the injury risk with him because he has a history of that. But at the end of the day, it's a move that had to be made. You know what I mean? It's a shame that he has had such an injury riddled season because he did bulk up. Before this season, he looked a little bigger than he ever had in his career in the beginning of this season, and he actually mentioned that him bulking up the way he did before the season prevented his latest injury from being worse than it actually was. He's still scheduled to come onto the court before the regular season ends. But at the end of the day, it's what you said, man. The inconsistency of him being in and out of the lineup is something that is always going to affect his teams because he's always going to be either the first or second best player on the team. And at this point, I feel like a lot of people expect him to be the best player on the team, take over that mantle for LeBron because of where LeBron is at this stage in his career. Even though I think he's kind of showing us all that he's still capable of being a number one, but going back to the topic of Anthony Davis, um, you expect him to be that type of player. And even when he has been on the court this year, he's been kind of underwhelming. His shooting has gone down to what it was last year, and especially in that year when they were in the bubble, his shooting has gone down. He's refused to play center as well. Um, there's still things that he needs to do to kind of correct things in his game to be able to be looked at as a true number one player. But it's something that he has to be on the court to be able to do.
yeah, and to really put it into perspective, LeBron is playing some of his best ball, especially as a Laker.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, leading the league in points, not even guaranteed a play-in spot. We're 11 games under 500. There is not even a sniff of his name being whispered in any MVP talk.
And it's impossible for that to happen when your team is seeded so low and has such a bad record. You know what I mean? And LeBron, as great as he has been this season, there still are a couple more players who, even if you look at it by the numbers, without including team record, have been playing at a better caliber than him. And Who are your MVP favorites? Those are mine. The ones you posted
Yeah,
right
no,
on the screen.
I would, yeah, those three you can throw them in any order, and it would be kind of hard to argue. At that point, it might just be preference. But I think another name, two names I'll say that are climbing is John Morant and
Of
Luka
course.
Doncic,
Mm-hmm.
who the Mavs had just beaten your Nets last night, where on a buzzer beater, Spencer Dinwiddie, a little bit of
Well,
revenge on the former team. No, it
and
was
it's
a
worse
great.
it came from him too. I would have rather it come from Luca, honestly.
Well, Luka had the kind of the Dirk Nowitzki knee high fadeaway jumper, with like 20 seconds to go. They went up, came down. The Nets came down. Durant hit a three to go up by 1 or 2 points, and then Nets take out of bounds Dinwiddie for three on a literal buzzer beater, and I had picked
Mm-hmm.
Brooklyn in that game as part of my best of last night. Got 8 of 10 right, or 8 of 12, whatever. Would have been 9 had
And
Dinwiddie missed
I
that.
love to call Brooklyn the bracket busters or parlay busters in this case, because whenever I bet on them, they always are the ones that bust mine, and they've been hot lately. But the Mavs got one in a really close game.
Yeah, and so the Mavs right now 43-26, fifth in the West, have the same record as Utah, with fourth in the West. So they could find themselves hosting a first round playoff series, and Luka Doncic is playing phenomenally,
Yeah,
especially
man, he
this
is.
this last stretch coming out from All Star break. Same as John Morant, who Memphis has got 48-22, second seed in the West. So I think those two have joined the three gentlemen behind us, so to speak, in terms of the MVP race. But I think if you're not really counting or including the recency bias and making sure you're looking at the grand scheme of things, I'm probably going to have to give it to. It's so tough. It's so tough because I feel like if I say one, I'm wrong. Like I should have picked one of the other two guys, but like you have the Bucks are now second in the East, the Sixers are third in the East, the Nuggets are sixth in the West, but it's Jokic is playing, has less to work with.
Hmm. I mean, looking at it from just a numbers perspective, for me,
It's so
I'm gonna have
I'm
to
really
go with
torn.
Jokic. You know what I mean? I'm gonna have to go with Jokic, even though he's slightly under Embiid and Giannis when it comes to scoring. He still surpasses them in the other facets of the game, and just the fact that he's had to do it with less compared to the other two just is an amazing thing. You know what I mean? The Nuggets, if they were in the East, would be a top four team. The fact that they're in the West and the top of the West is pretty tough, has them at number six. But Nikola Jokic has been playing amazing ball. He's actually playing better than he did last year, which is incredible to me. Out of the three, he has the highest field goal percentage. He has the highest efficiency. Um, play makes better than the rest of them. Has helped his team really be able to float above water as far as playoff standings go. And he's my favorite just for those reasons right there. Now, I wouldn't argue too much if anybody picked any of the other two, and Embiid or Giannis. But what's your pick? Who do you
I'm
think
looking
right
at
now
them.
should be the lead?
Yeah, I'm confident in having it narrowed down between Jokic, and Embiid. I'm looking at the numbers now. It's really, 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 really so tough. Where I would still probably have to give it to. This is really the hardest one I think in some time.
Yeah,
If you're putting, you know, gun to my head, I might have to just go with Jokic. I really I just feel like that's kind of gonna fall into the way the voting usually goes. You
hmm
just seen Giannis win back to back, and we've seen LeBron win back to back twice. So it's not Steph won back to back. So there's not it's not out of the question for a back to back. It's very 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 possible.
Now you tell
Yeah,
me.
I gotta go
I'm
Jokic.
I'm wondering I'm wondering where you look at this from your perspective. A lot of people argue that any player that wins back to back MVPs should at least part of the criteria for that should at least be whether there's a high likelihood of their team getting to the championship. You know what I mean? And although the Nuggets are in playoff position right now, and who knows what kind of run they could go on, nobody has picked them or thinks of them as a favorite to even make the finals. You know what I mean? And I just wanted to know, what do you think about that type of criteria being applied to MVP winners? Because I know for a lot of NBA history, that's been part of the voting process for media members. But what do you think about that?
I think that you have situations where cases like Westbrook with a
Mm-hmm.
triple doubles. There is not a single person on this planet that will say today or would have said then that that team has a chance of winning a championship. I
Yeah.
even go back to last year with Jokic. Yes, they made it to the Western Finals, right? They made it to the Western.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think they have even two of the last couple, maybe.
No, 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 not last year, but the year
It was
before.
okay.
Not
So it was the
last
year
year, but the year
before.
before.
Okay, I don't think really they were thought as a true contender.
Nah,
That was I just and I'm looking back
that's another year they
at
overachieved.
yeah. I mean, going through
But you bring
all
up
the
an interesting point. You brought up an interesting point in that year that Russell Westbrook won it, right? Because I feel like that was the year that kind of conventional wisdom got flipped over on its head, and the media kind of set a precedent about not necessarily having, the best player on a top seeded team be the MVP frontrunner or MVP winner. That's the year that kind of messed everything up. And so, for that reason alone, I feel like that's good enough of a reason for not having a top seeded team be a criteria for an MVP winner. But a lot of people still look at it otherwise. A lot of people think that Giannis should probably win it again. A lot of people's favorite is Embiid just because he's a guy who's never won it. He'd be a different name added to the list, and his team is a top. The standings. I think they're at number 3 right now, right?
yes,
Mm-hmm.
Embiid the Sixers.
Yep.
Yep, they're third at 42 and 26. Milwaukee's 44 and 26 at the second seed.
Okay, yeah. So, I'm pretty sure that those two guys are probably a lot of people's favorites to win MVPs just because of how highly seeded their teams are. And, a lot of people are picking those teams to make deep playoff runs, but I feel like if we're looking at it just strictly based on the numbers and consistency and performance all year, Nikola Jokic is my guy.
So if they were, or even if you just did, you put them into the East, they have the same 42 and 28 record as Boston. Depending on that tiebreaker, they would be fourth in the East. So you would have in this order behind us, 2, 3, 4, Giannis, Embiid, Jokic. So if you were to, so really in overall seedings, they're all right there.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's and so for that reason, I think, especially the way the voting has been going last couple of years, I think Jokic, especially if he has a strong end of the season, where even if it's just plateauing and doing what he's doing now, even if there's not, he puts on like an extra end of the season, splash of stats or games, whatever. I think he's going to be the MVP.
Man, that would be awesome to see, though, man. Jokic putting on for the Doughboys. And, it's so fun to watch him play. He has a beautiful style of play. He's so skilled. I think he's honestly one of the best passers, not just in terms of big men, but anybody. You can put him up against any guard, too. He's, probably one of the best passers in NBA history.
He might be the best passer in the league since LeBron.
For sure. For sure, man.
I mean,
It's been fun to watch him.
he's And he's, you know what, another thing with Jokic too, and it might be kind of a shame because he's in Denver, which is in a little bit of a weird area of the country, especially basketball wise, where you're
Yeah,
not, the media there is not huge. It's in a weird time zone. So for the most part, the majority of the country isn't seeing Jokic on a even, not nightly basis, but even a kind of every other night basis.
yeah,
So he's also honestly very likable.
yeah.
So Giannis is likable. Embiid, I think, can go. He's likable, but I think out of the three of them, he might rub people the wrong way sometimes. But I think this year, with the rest of the season that they have to go, I think you're gonna have Jokic win MVP.
Let's see how it goes, man. It's going to be interesting either way come the end of the season.
So yeah, so that I did want to lead us into our next topic that happened last night between two teams, Celtics and Warriors. The
Man,
kind of the main talking point with this game was the second quarter play, in which there is a loose ball. Marcus Smart and Steph Curry are going after it. Marcus Smart, who we know is a very hard competing player, he will dive on the floor. He'll make the hard play. He'll make the dirty plays. Not dirty in terms of play, like fair or foul, just dirty in terms of like the grindingness. Like he'll do the tough work. So
hmm
he dives after a loose ball and kind of catches Steph underneath him, where Steph, I believe it's his ankle, and
yep. And his
it's
foot.
his foot and his ankle, so he will be out through the rest of the regular season. I'm gonna ask you. I don't know. Have you seen the play?
I did see the play. I don't
Do
think
you
that it
think?
was intentional. I don't think it was intentionally dirty.
But do you think
I
it
don't
was
know if that's
dirty?
where you were going. No, I don't.
I don't think it was as well.
Like that's a tough play. A play like that is so, bang bang, where two guys are going after the ball and stuff like that. You can always have an injury like that happen on any type of play. It's not the most routine type of play, but it's like you said, it's that hustle type of play where if anything goes wrong, you can have an injury like that. And I can understand Steve Kerr's frustration of how he got angry on the court last night and stuff like that because you just had Draymond Green out for a significant amount of time, and you saw how badly the Warriors needed him. They fell off a little bit in terms of record and stuff like that without him on the court. But now, as soon as you get him back, you get your franchise player, best player on your team, hurt right after. You know what I mean? And it's just something frustrating. They're talking about him potentially also missing time in the playoffs, which, if that's the case, who knows what can happen. I know that they can't make a deep playoff run without Steph, especially because Klay Thompson right now is a number two, isn't the same Klay Thompson from years ago. He
No.
struggled coming off the two catastrophic
And
injuries that
now,
he's had.
and now, do you want to? And now is Draymond now with the moved up to number two, coming off the injury? Is that going to be beneficial? I don't think so.
I mean, it's beneficial in terms of everything except for offense. You know what I mean? And in the offense, he plays his role, but the only way that he can play his role effectively is with Steph and Klay on the court. And without one of them on the court and another guy who's hampered and still kind of trying to get right on the court, trying to get right with his game, it's kind of going to leave Draymond with little options on how to play make. Andrew Wiggins, I don't think he's going to be the guy to really step up and provide that spark for them to help them push without Steph. And it's just something frustrating. You know what I mean? Steph has had an amazing first half of the year. A lot of people, thought that he might win an MVP again, or at the very
He
least
was
make a
All
deep
Star
playoff run.
MVP.
Yeah,
Not that
man,
that
that
necessarily
crazy game
means
that he
anything, but he was having just this whole season. Just everything about it was kind of a revenge Steph tour.
exactly, man. And a lot of people expected them to be one of the teams in the West to really make a run for that finals. They were the team that everybody thought was gonna compete with the Suns to make the finals out of the West. And this injury just honestly doesn't spell good things for them going forward. I hope Steph can get healthy at least for the playoffs. And I don't mean healthy enough to just play, but healthy enough to
Right.
not get hurt again and to actually be a contributing factor for the Warriors going far.
The Warriors right now 47 and 23, a game behind Memphis for the second seed. In the third seed, if the playoffs started today, they are playing Jokic and the Denver Nuggets.
Hmm. And that's a
They're
series that the Nuggets can actually make interesting if Steph doesn't play, right?
yeah, I mean, so now we'll get to the Steph injury aspect of it. How does that affect their either their playoff seeding, playoff chances in the first round? I think, especially if he's going to be out even the first game or two of the playoffs, I think they're in a bit of a pickle here. I think they're pretty in some tough waters. This top of the West is really brutal. That first
Hmm.
round the whole first round game one. It's just going to be a gauntlet from the start. I think the
Honestly,
Warriors
they can.
are
There's
not
a
in great shape.
possibility that they can get. There's a possibility for them to get bounced out of the first round, depending who they face. You know what I mean? Steph isn't going to play the rest of the regular season, which means that they can realistically drop off into the fourth seed, or fifth seed, depending on how good the Jazz and Mavericks play going forward. And it just doesn't spell anything good for them because they're going to either face the Mavericks or the Nuggets going into that first round. And without Steph Curry, I don't think that they get past either of those teams. You know, Luka has already shown that he's capable of leading them to playoff wins. You know, he's made things interesting and actually beat the Clippers. You know, in one of these last couple years, and also who's the other team who's there right over the mix with them? The Nuggets. You know, they have a possible
Nuggets.
MVP on
So
their team.
so you have and then you have the Timberwolves at seventh at 41 and 30. So between Memphis and the Timberwolves 2-7, there is a game 7.5 game difference for
Okay,
six
yeah. So
seeds. I
like
mean, they're
it's crazy.
Minnesota probably
They're definitely making the playoffs, but there's a high probability that if Steph isn't back for that first round, I if he's not back for whatever first round matchup they play, I wouldn't pick them. I'm gonna pick the other team, regardless of who they are, whether it's the Jazz, Nuggets, or the Mavericks.
yeah. No, that's not a terrible idea. I would probably go the same way. Like Minnesota at 7, Minnesota is only a game and a half behind Denver. I still think at the end of the
Hmm.
day, either Dallas or Denver is going to be that last playoff team. You're going to have Minnesota probably stay as your seventh seed, so
Hmm.
they will be your top play-in team. If yeah, if I'm the Warriors, and I'm a Warriors fan, I'm scared as hell.
I'm telling you, man, and it's just unfortunate because in the beginning of the year they were playing so well, winning so many games. They were looked at as a favorite to win the finals, and just with all the injuries that have plagued them, they played without Clay for the whole first half of the year. Then Draymond dropped after that, missed a big chunk of the season, and they started falling down the rankings from there. And now with this Steph injury, just nothing has gone right for them ever since the All Star break.
No, no, and it's just it's just not the position they want to be in, and the top of the West. It's just too tough. That's straight up what it is. They're just too good of teams up there, and then
Seriously.
the first round to get all the second conference finals, like they're really in for the highest of uphill battles.
Hmm.
So that being said, that'll take us to our final topic of the night, our finals preview, or predictions rather. We don't have a preview. We have predictions. Um, I have my teams. I don't know if I have the winner yet, but I have my two teams in
The,
the
the teams you think
finals.
are gonna come out of the conferences. Who you got?
I really think we are, especially now where kind of the smoke is starting to clear a little bit. We really see what the teams are for what they are. If you want to take out a Steph injury aspect type of deal for any of these teams, I really think we're getting a rematch between the Bucks and the Suns.
Yeah,
Even as much as I love my Heat, I think Giannis, he might still be too tough to take down.
yeah, man, and
I
Jimmy
would probably
kind of
pick
been all
Giannis. I would probably pick the Bucks in 7 against my Heat. I really, it kills me to say that, but I
so
really
no
think
hope
we're
for the
gonna.
Nets for you, huh?
I think just you have Kevin Durant now calling out Eric Adams, where that could
Mhm.
either do great things for you or terrible things for you. And he's already complaining to people about stop filming cops. So he's already in a terrible mood about things. So I don't think that was a great idea. I wouldn't be surprised if this mandate isn't lifted. I could still see them. Like I said, I still think of them as a bit of a powder keg, where if the wrong thing blows up, it could just be a disaster. I still think some of these other East teams are too cohesive of a unit, like Milwaukee, or even a Boston is playing so well. My
Yeah.
Heat are still atop of the East. Philly is can get their crap together, but I still think at the end of the day we're gonna get a Suns Bucks finals rematch.
That's
I
not a
don't know
bad
who I'd pick
prediction,
yet.
honestly.
I don't know who I'd pick yet, but I just think we're gonna get a rematch.
That's not a bad it. I agree with half of your sentiment. I think coming out of the West, the Suns are going to be the team to come out of there. Um, but coming out of the East, and this might sound like a homer pick, but I don't care. You can call me a homer. I'm going to go with the Nets. And the reason I believe that is because the Nets coming straight out of the playoffs are going to have the toughest teams to face because they're going to probably be an 8 or 7 seed. They're going to face either the Bucks or the Heat. And I feel like the biggest obstacle for the Nets to that finals is either Philly or the Bucks, and I think the Bucks are a bigger obstacle to surpass, obviously because they have Giannis and Middleton, and the whole history and rivalry that's been started between them ever since last year. And I'm not 100% certain that they can actually get past that team because the Bucks are still a team to be feared, but they're gonna be going into the
Fear the
playoffs
deer.
with a the Nets are going to be going into the playoff with a major roster upgrade from what they were in the beginning of the year. KD's going to come back. He's going to be healthy. Kyrie, he's going to be playing in at least most of the games because let's say the Nets don't end up paying the fines for him to play at home. Because they're seeded so low going into the playoffs, they're going to, have more road games to play than home games all throughout the playoffs. And
Which
that means that you
which I
get
think at
three
this
for
point
four
would
games.
be And at this point, I think it would make no sense because you paid $50,000 for him being in the locker room. Like you had to know that some
Exactly.
type of ramification was going to come from that. So if you're willing to do that, then there's no excuse for you not to do, even if it's morally not the most right thing to do. It's not illegal. It's not like really terrible considering the kind of hypocrisy and the whole, like I said, Swiss cheese logic that the mandate really is. There's no
Hmm.
excuse for at that point you not to just bite every little bullet that those fines are if you're the Nets and you just rock these playoffs and you just go balls to the wall for it. And if that's the
Exactly, man.
case, and if that's the case, then the Nets are certainly the team to be scared of.
Yeah, and they still have the prospects of Simmons coming back, right? And if you remember last year, before Kyrie got hurt, the Nets were, blowing the Bucks out. They were trouncing them. So it's not like the Nets really fear the Bucks like that, like they know that the Bucks are a tough matchup, but I think that they know that they're better than them. And as long as they can stay healthy, I really do think that they have what it takes to get through all those top teams in the East. They should be atop of the Eastern Conference standings right now, but because of how much injuries they've been battling all year and the whole thing with Kyrie being a part-time player is the only reason they're 8 seed, but they're an 8 seed to be feared. I mean, and coming out of the West, they do think that the Suns are gonna return to the finals. They've been the runaway best team in the league all year. Have been very consistent all year. Devin Booker has broken out into like superstar status this year. He's been great for them. They're gonna have Chris Paul come back for them in the playoffs as well, so they're only gonna get better going into the postseason. Possibly make things interesting for them. But there's really no other teams in the West who have really shown the ability to be able to beat a team as good as the Suns in a 7-game series. The only team that's kind of been as consistent as them all year in terms of winning games and looking good on the court has been the Grizzlies. But they're still, I think, a few years away from really being a team to perennially contend for finals positions. And the Suns have a pretty easy path to the finals, I think, this year, an easier path than they did last year. So I would expect them to return to the finals for that reason alone.
Yeah. So your Nets Suns, is that your on record Nets Suns?
Nets Suns.
Okay.
Yep, I'm gonna go
record.
with that.
I'm on record with the rematch between the Bucks Suns. I don't know about you, but I'm all NBA and basketball out. We got some good college games still going on that I did want to get some screen time on. And if anybody out there is wondering, the Pistons are leading the Magic 73-62 at halftime. So a little bit of a high scoring game there. Yeah, here's something. Here's random. Sadiq Bey. Ready now? So we have this whole stretch of these guys scoring 50, 60 points for like a week or two now. Sadiq Bey for the Pistons got 30 points at halftime.
Wow. So we
Makes
might
no
see another
sense.
50.
Makes no sense. Makes no sense. Yeah,
This has been an amazing month.
I mean, at that point, with these two, first of all, these are the only two teams that are actually eliminated from any, literally eliminated so far. So they have nothing to play for but their own personal stats. So he might go for 100 this game. Who knows? But
this has been a great month, man. Between the March Madness and all the pro basketball players going for 50, 60 points, it's been a great month for basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I was waking up, and especially with these games, I was like, is anybody scoring 50 tonight? And, these last few nights we've been right. But so that's going to pretty much wrap it up for us here for our St. Patrick's Day NBA March Madness special. We are going to be back on Sunday, where we're going to be doing the we originally changed it from, forget what the first game was, but now we're going to be doing Celtics Nuggets. So we'll get that very good matchup. We'll see our MVP pick in Jokic versus the Celtics, and Jason Tatum. Maybe one of those guys will put up 50. That's definitely a high-powered game. But that's going to pretty much do it for me. You guys can follow us, Streampunk Sports, here on Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, Streampunk Entertainment on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, as well as our website, streampunkent.com, Streampunk Entertainment. Mondays, I'll be back 6:30 with my show, Home Court Press. If you're available, you are more than happy to jump on. We will talk about more NBA stuff that happened over the weekend. But if you have any final thoughts, I'm as good as gold to wrap this up.
No, yeah, we could wrap it up, man. It was good talking about some things on the analysis side. A lot of good topics. A lot of things have been going on throughout the NBA world and just basketball in general in the last month. So, it's been good to wrap things up kind of here for the people so that we can have them caught up on everything going on.
Yep, definitely. So we will be back Sunday with Nuggets Celtics. That is Ernesto. I'm Brandon. For everyone else at Streampunk Entertainment, have a good one.
Peace, y'all.